Today, neuroscience and psychology will reveal what really happens inside your brain when you spend a lot of time alone. And maybe, just maybe, in the end, you'll understand a little more about yourself. Now think for a second. When was the last time you spent a whole day without talking to anyone? No messages, no calls, no social media. How did you feel? Calm or disconnected from the world? Loneliness, although it seems like just an emotional state, profoundly alters the way your brain works. And the curious thing is that sometimes you don't even realize it's happening. Loneliness may seem like a choice, and for some people, it is. But when it lasts too long, the brain begins to react as if it were in danger. Researchers at the University of Chicago have found that social isolation activates the same regions of the brain involved in physical pain. In other words, feeling lonely literally hurts. The brain interprets the lack of connection as a threat to survival because, biologically, we are programmed to live in groups. Thousands of years ago, being alone meant vulnerability. And that legacy still lives within us, in our limbic system, responsible for emotions and the instinct for protection. But what really happens inside your head when you spend a lot of time isolated? The first region affected is the prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making and emotional control. Over time, it loses efficiency. This explains why people who spend long periods alone have more difficulty concentrating or staying motivated. Another area is the amygdala, the center of intense emotions. When loneliness becomes constant, the amygdala becomes more reactive, which means you may start to interpret the world as a more hostile place, even when there is no real danger. And then there is the dopaminergic system, which regulates pleasure and reward. Without social interactions, the brain reduces the release of dopamine, which leads to a state of apathy, that feeling that nothing is exciting enough anymore. In short, the more time you spend alone, the more your brain goes into defense mode, and the less it experiences the natural pleasure of human connection. But here's the key point. Loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. Solitude is when you choose to be alone and use that time to reconnect with yourself. Loneliness, on the other hand, is when you feel disconnected, even though you desire company. In terms of the brain, the difference is huge. During moments of solitude, the brain activates areas linked to self-reflection and creativity, such as the cingulate cortex and the default mode network, which are responsible for introspective thoughts. That's why many brilliant ideas are born in silence. But when solitude turns into prolonged loneliness, the brain changes its pattern. It reduces serotonin, increases cortisol, and over time, this can even promote symptoms of anxiety and depression. Even without realizing it, your brain is constantly trying to reconnect. You start watching more videos, scrolling through your feed, or seeking out small interactions online. This is your brain trying to trick the feeling of isolation, a form of digital emotional survival. But there's one detail. These virtual connections only partially activate the empathy and reward circuits. In other words, the brain feels momentary relief, but soon returns to seek something deeper, real human contact. In the end, the brain doesn't want noise or crowds, it just wants to belong, even if it's to a small group or a single person who truly understands it. So if you've been spending a lot of time alone, maybe your brain is just trying to tell you that it needs connection. And the good news is, the same brain that suffers from loneliness is also the one that heals with bonding. Sometimes all it needs is a hello from the other side of the screen. If this content has added value to your life in any way, please help us by leaving your like and subscription so you can show us that we are doing a good job. See you soon.